let's talk about some things that got me through this pandemic. This year has obviously been different than other years. It has been mostly hellish. But of course, there have been some good things this year as well too. So I'm going to talk about a few of the things that helped me get through this year that was 2020. The first thing, the biggest thing, the thing that I'm sure all of you have already heard about, but I need to talk about it anyways, and that is Hamilton. I fucking loved this so goddamn much. I watched this, of course, the day it came out on Disney Plus, and I have been obsessed ever since. It actually took me about half an hour to get into. Wait, if you somehow don't know what Hamilton is, first of all, how? Hamilton is a Broadway musical that Disney actually filmed over 2 days and put it on their streaming service. It was written by and stars Lin-Manuel Miranda as Alexander Hamilton, and it just kind of talks about Alexander Hamilton's life as well as his political career. It took me about half an hour to actually enjoy Hamilton. As I was watching it, I was like, oh no, I might be the only person in the world to not like this. But thank God, I ended up actually loving it. It's about when the girls come out and start singing their songs that I just absolutely goddamn fell in love. And honestly, those are still two of my favorite songs. Satisfied and Hopeless. Yeah. I have listened to this album probably 200 or 300 times since I first watched the musical. It sounds like something that shouldn't work. The idea of a history lesson, but with hip-hop music. It just doesn't sound like it would be at all appealing. Honestly, what comes to mind is Mr. Shoe from Glee, and nobody wants that, but it works because of the absolute mind-blowing talent that is on that stage. It is insane. Like, whoever casted that show, I imagine it was probably Lin-Manuel Miranda. He does everything else, but like, they got it so right. Every single role is just casted perfectly, and every song, every performance, all of the choreography, like everything is just so good. And I really, really, really hope that more streaming services start to do this, because I feel like musicals, or just Broadway in general, is such an inaccessible art and such an inaccessible medium. Most people cannot afford to go to Broadway plays, and it's also just one of those things where unless you live in New York or Toronto, you really can't get to them to begin with. It was also just so great to get to see like the original cast in this as well. Oh god, I mean, I could honestly gush about it forever because it's literally taken over my life this year. The next thing that really took over most of my year was My Favorite Murder. This is another thing that most people have heard of, and I am the last person to jump on board. So the My Favorite Murder podcast is hosted by Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark, and they are two women who each week talk about a different murder. They each take one murder and talk about it and kind of tell the story of this murder to each other. And I honestly, once again, didn't think I was going to like this, because I've heard that it's a comedy murder podcast, and I was like, that doesn't sound like a good idea. But it turns out that I actually loved it. Once again, it took me a couple episodes. I think it was about the third one that I was just like, okay, yeah, I get it, I love it, I'm into it. And I literally listened to all 400 episodes in probably 3 months. This is all I did for about 3 months. I have a really hard time with true crime podcasts. I love them, like many people, but I often sometimes do feel like they're a little bit exploitative in the sense that somebody has died and you're telling their entire life to like however many people. And you know, they might not want all of their secrets out there. They might not want people talking about their sex lives on a podcast. And so sometimes I get really turned off by podcasts. For instance, Up and Vanish, which everyone seems to love, I really, really didn't like. And that's like a whole other spiel. But the thing I really love about My Favorite Murder is I feel like they really focus on the actual murderer and not the victims as much. I mean, they talk about the victims, they talk about what badasses they are, and they give them respect. But they don't necessarily examine the victims' lives to quite the extent that a lot of other podcasts do, and I weirdly appreciate that. It's definitely been a bright spot in this year for me because it allowed me to laugh and have fun in an otherwise crappy year. So yeah, really appreciated My Favorite Murder. If you haven't checked it out somehow, I definitely think it's worth a shot. The next thing I want to talk about is the book series The Havoc Boys by C.M. Stunich. I read the first book to this series, I think last year, and I did not love it. This is essentially a reverse harem erotica series about a girl who is in high school, which, first of all, can we stop putting erotica books in a high school? It's fucking weird. Anyways, it's about this girl who's in high school, and essentially she ends up dating all of the boys in this gang. And the first book, when I read it, I was like, this writing is not good. But I did really enjoy the idea of this girl hooking up with all these different guys. It was kind of fun. And there were certain guys that I really wanted to see her with, but she didn't get with those guys in the first book. And I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna bother. But then somebody in my comment sections, thank you, by the way, told me that she does eventually get with those guys. So I was like, you know what? I'm picking up the second book, and I loved it. Now let me just say, the writing does not get better. The writing is trash. These books are not good, but they were so enjoyable that I just don't care. Like, when people say guilty pleasure, this is definitely my guilty pleasure. I've now read the first 3 books in the series. I still have 2 more, but I already own the 4th one, and then, yeah, I have to buy the 5th one still. It's very repetitive, it's very melodramatic, over the top, ridiculous, but I do really enjoy each of the boys. They kind of, I mean, it would be so easy for all of them to blur into one another because they're all gang members, and so they're all essentially just different bad boy tropes, and I mean, they're essentially just different shades of the same color, but I really enjoy that she is able to differentiate each boy, and she's able to also differentiate their dynamics between each boy and the main character, because they all have kind of a different type of relationship, which I love. And yeah, I kind of hate myself for it, but this book series really brought me a lot of joy throughout this year. Another thing that brought me a lot of joy are comic books. I kind of found comic books last year, but I really got into them this year, and Comixology, let me just say, is like my favorite app ever. I know it's owned by Amazon, and that fucking sucks. But it's just, there's so much there to read. I live in the middle of nowhere, and I would not be able to like get to a comic book store to get latest issues and stuff, so I'm really happy to have the Comixology app overall. Some of the ones that I absolutely love this year and that have really helped get me through the pandemic, the first one being Fables. I finished the entire Fables series. I started it last year, and I finally finished it. I will say, it ended fucking horribly. The ending of Fables is garbage, but the series overall was just fantastic. So many feels. Went on way too long, and I did read a lot of the spin-offs as well, but I don't think any of those were really worth mentioning as much as just the core Fables series has a special place in my heart. If you don't know what Fables is, it's basically all of the fairy tale characters you know and love, and they've been driven out of their homeland, and now they have to live in the real world. And, you know, very much like Once Upon a Time, if you've ever seen that show. The second series is one that I actually found and started and finished this year, and that is Chew. Chew is about a detective named Tony Chew who has these special powers that are connected to food. Essentially, whatever he eats, he is able to see kind of like the history of, or like the life of. So whether it's an apple that he's able to eat and see how it was harvested and where and what pesticides were used on it, or whether it's pork that he eats and he's able to see where that pig was raised and how the farmer treated it. Now obviously he uses these special powers to solve murders as well. If you've ever seen the show iZombie, it is similar to that, except that he's not a zombie, it's just like a special power he has. The series also kind of like expands and shows all these other types of powers that are related to food. It's really weird, it's really quirky, but I just found it so comforting and funny, and just, I really enjoyed it. I was really going for comfort reads this year. Last year my favorites were Lock and Key and Nailbiter, and this year I needed some comforting things to read. So I absolutely love Chew. I would definitely recommend it. And the other comic book series that really got me through was Giant Days. Another one that is just so comforting and lovely. This is about 3 girls who go to college together in the UK, I believe, which there are definitely a lot of like Britanisms that I wasn't totally understanding being from Canada, but besides that, like, I just fell in love with these 3 girls and their friendship. It's so great, and then you get to see their relationships, and it just follows their lives throughout their college experience. I think if you're just looking for a nice pick-me-up, it's really perfect. Another thing I got into this year was audiobooks. This year I definitely listened to a bit more than I did last year. I found especially that like I'm not super into young adult anymore, but if I listen to it on audiobook, it's a lot easier for me to get through, because there definitely are some young adult books that I still want to read, even if it's not necessarily my cup of tea anymore. And another thing is the app Grand Harvest, which I know this is super lame. It's just like a solitaire app, but like on a farm. I played that shit to death because I get really bored if I'm just listening to an audiobook. I need to be doing something, and playing this app was what I did. I think I got to like level 3000 before I finally had to delete it from my phone because it started like freaking out, and it just wasn't working anymore. I am so sad. It literally broke my heart to lose all my progress, but it was a great app to just sit and kind of mindlessly play while I listen to audiobooks. The next thing that I was absolutely obsessed with this year was the show The Vow. This is about the cult NXIVM, which essentially was this like self-help group, I guess, that definitely seemed to have a little bit of like Scientology type mindset. And anyways, the founder of the group, Keith Raniere, he was arrested for all sorts of crazy crap that they did. I will say that this series does not go as in-depth as I would have liked it to go. I already listened to the Uncover podcast about NXIVM, which I listened to that before The Vow ever came out, and I do think they did a better job in the podcast. But this show was still really interesting and just kind of a crazy look at how people can get tricked and just swept under something they would otherwise normally never agree with. I do really want to check out the other show that they have about NXIVM that's on Starz. And the third bright spot for this year was our washing machine. I realize this is like such a stupid thing, but as people who have lived in apartments for the last like 10 years, having a washing machine is amazing. I just can't explain how life-changing this has been. It never occurred to me that you could buy appliances for an apartment building. And let me tell you, if you have not thought about doing this yet, you need to. We now have a small apartment-sized dishwasher and a small apartment-sized washing machine, and it has been the best decision of our lives. Another thing that helped get me through this year, except this is more of a life favorite, is the game Terraforming Mars. We have played the shit out of this for probably 3 or 4 years now. Especially in the summer, we take it out to the balcony and play it out there. It's just a board game about terraforming Mars, literally how it sounds. We have bought every single expansion pack, and we literally play this game over and over and over again. We play it probably twice a day because it is a long fucking game, and just even playing it twice takes about 6 hours. And yeah, it has taken over our lives in the summer, but it is time well spent. We're very much board game people. We probably have 100 board games in our apartment, but by far, Terraforming Mars has been the favorite. We keep buying new board games and we don't even touch them because we just keep going back to Terraforming Mars over and over again. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on some YouTube favorites and some YouTubers that I've really loved over this year. I'm gonna go through these kind of fast because I have a lot to talk about and I don't want to like sit here forever and bore everyone. The first is Generation DIY. I love her DIYs because I follow a couple DIY YouTubers and I find often they seem either like completely undoable where you're like, no, I don't have that skill, or they're just things that you would never actually want to make. But she does like found the sweet spot for actually making things that are cute, that are giftable, that I feel like I might actually be able to do and that I would definitely use. I just find she's great at like knowing what's trendy, but also just like thinking outside the box. Next is Karina Gomez. She is like a thrifting queen, and I'm once again subscribed to a lot of different thrifting YouTubers, but like their style usually kind of isn't my style. I feel like there's a specific thrifting style, and I just don't personally get it, but I feel like Karina takes that style but like makes it sexier, makes it cooler, and I just like love her style overall. A little more glam than your average thrifting girl, and she rocks it. I've fallen in love with 3 different makeup gurus. I definitely am a lover of makeup, and I kind of like stopped watching beauty YouTubers for a while, but I've really gotten back into it now, and I feel like that's because of these 3 girls. Abby Williamson, Julia Adams MUA, and Alexandra NL. Alexandra does like really short, very specific videos, which I have found so helpful. Like, I feel like at this point I know how to do my makeup, but it's so nice to actually like see someone go through the basics again, because you kind of forget after a while, especially when you're not putting on makeup for most of the year. So she does like, she'll do one video all about contour and one video all about bronzer, and like it's just been so helpful to actually see. Julia Adams is a fellow Canadian and her makeup is just beautiful. I also just like really love her personality. And then Abby Williamson is just like so cool, and I love to see someone who's into makeup but it has more of like an edgier style. I just really vibe with that. And then next I of course want to talk about some fellow booktubers. Mina Reeds, that's been someone who I've been checking out a ton this year. I love her videos. I love how frank she is when she talks about like smut and erotica, because I mean, a girl after my own heart there. Mara Reeds is someone who comes up with really cool video concepts. She's right now doing a series about reading like different Enneagram types, and I think that's super fun. Katie Coulson is someone I found this year, and like I just love her personality. I love how she talks about books and how excited she gets. Tiana T is someone who comes up with really cool videos as well. I want to leave like my links to my favorite videos that each of these people have done with her. I remember she did this video where she like rented a hotel room and tried to like get her Goodreads goal up. She's just like so great at editing and filming and coming up with cool ideas, so love that. Books are neat. She had a recent video where she drank and recapped like all the books that she'd been reading over the past couple months. That was really fun and I completely love that, and I almost thought about doing that just to recap all the books I've been reading lately. My name is Marina's. She did a video series that got me onto her channel that was about like going through all of her books color by color, I think it was, or maybe it was shelf by shelf. And she essentially said what she would be taking with her on her move, and like I absolutely adored that. Also, she's one of the only people who makes Twitter about her place, which is nearly impossible. And the last person I want to talk about is Jordaline Reeds. She talks about, not only does she talk about horror, which has brought me so much joy. I just added so many horror books from her my favorite horror of 2020 list to my TBR. But not only is she a horror queen, she also loves makeup and is snarky as hell, and that's just my vibe. I love it. So please check out some of these YouTubers if you need anyone to add to your subscription feed. I promise you they will bring you nothing but joy. These are the things that got me through 2020. Hopefully 2021 will be a better year. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you'll come back again soon. Bye.